What is compliance? Now, most people think compliance is just paperwork, policies, training courses, and forms you sign once a year and then immediately forget. So compliance is about protecting organizations from risk. So in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what compliance means, why it exists, why so many organizations get it wrong, and share my simple compliance framework I like to call the compliance triangle. At its simplest level, compliance means following laws, regulations, and internal policies. Imagine running a business is like driving a bus full of passengers, and your passengers are your employees, your customers, your investors, your partners, and it would go as far to even say your reputation. Now imagine driving that bus without traffic laws. The roads would be chaos, there would be accidents everywhere. And it's the same in business. Without rules, the system just collapses. So compliance is essentially the traffic system of business. It creates rules that keep organizations operating safely and legally, and ensures that they're compliant. So why does compliance exist? Compliance exists because history keeps proving that we need it. See, most regulations are actually written after something goes wrong. So corporate scandals, financial collapses, safety failures, fraud, corruption, each one becomes a lesson, and compliance rules are designed to stop those same mistakes happening again. In 2012, one of the largest banks in the world was fined $1.9 billion after US authorities found it had failed to prevent money laundering by Mexican and Colombian drug cartels. The core issue was weak compliance systems and poor oversight. So actually the issue wasn't just criminal behavior, it was compliance failure. Now, I want you to imagine a castle. Like a strong castle has walls, it has gates, guards, and watchtowers, right? But a weak castle, however, might still have guards, but they haven't been trained on how to guard a castle, or the castle gates are broken or left open even, or the walls have holes in them, and nobody's actually watching the guard towers. That's what poor compliance systems look like. And what you actually find is that when organizations build weak systems or don't effectively train their teams, problems eventually find their way inside. I like to explain compliance using a simple framework. I call it the compliance triangle, and there are 3 parts, hence a triangle. And if any of these parts is missing, then the structure becomes unstable. So whilst you look at the triangle, I also want you to imagine you're building a house. So looking at the triangle, then the first part is rules. Now, these are laws, regulations, and internal policies that organizations must follow. In our house example, the rules are the architectural plans and building regulations. They define what the house should look like, how strong it must be, and the standards it must meet. But plans alone do not build a house, which brings us to the second part, systems. Systems are the construction processes and tools that turn those plans into a real building. Think about things like monitoring, reporting, training, internal controls when it comes to compliance. Well, in the house example, this is the construction work itself. The third part is culture. Culture is how people behave when nobody is watching. In our house example, culture is the attitude of the builders on site. So you can have perfect blueprints and architectural plans, you can have all the right tools and processes, but if the builders decide to cut corners, ignore safety standards, or rush the job, the house may look fine on the outside, but the structure will eventually fail. So in other words, rules design the house, systems build the house, but culture determines whether the house is built properly or poorly. So why do so many businesses get compliance wrong? Now, one of the biggest problems I see when working with organizations is that they treat compliance like a checklist. Real compliance requires something deeper. It requires systems and training that actually influences behavior. And that's why compliance isn't just a legal issue, it's also a leadership issue. Thank you for watching. I'm John Loveday, CEO and co-founder of Study Academy, where training your team and remaining compliant has never been easier.